So, like I said, I'm from Cindy. I'm from Haven Behavioral Hospital, and I have the northern region, which is our Darke County, Miami County, Shelby County, on north for being the community liaison and an outreach coordinator. And I just put up just a couple of pictures so that you guys could see some of the things that we have done in Troy. There's been a golf outing that we've done. We've done the Lost Creek Halloween thing. We went to several nursing homes in the Miami County and done snow cones. We provided snow cones for it. We went to Story Point and been part of their activities that they're holding. And as you can see in that one, their chef is absolutely amazing, isn't he? That design, that green one, the white background with the green, that's actually carved into a watermelon. Isn't that great? I just love him. Like, it's excellent. So today we're together and we're going to do what's called Working Minds, and you guys are going to get an abbreviated portion of this. This is a 2-hour-long presentation, and it's usually done in person because there are workbooks and groups that you divide them out into, and they do several case studies and that sort of thing. But we have shortened it down to 45 minutes to comply with us being here. We do this free out to any facility, company that wants to do the Working Minds. The only cost for this is their workbook, and it's a pretty good size workbook. The price is somewhere between $10 and $12 a piece. So that's, not too much. This was developed out in the University of Colorado by Helen and Arthur E. Johnson in their Depression Center. And it kind of brings suicide into the workplace and kind of helps employers learn warning signs, risk factors, and some of the ways that you can speak to someone that you feel might be wanting to commit suicide or contemplating it. So our mission for this is just to provide people with depression and mood disorders some help through clinical excellence and innovative research, through community programs like this one, and some education. And what we want to do is eliminate some barriers to get them quality care and to make healthier communities. So our main messages today are going to be suicide prevention matters. Anybody can help, and even after today, you guys will learn some techniques that will be able to assist you in your workplace if you think someone's been showing some of the risk factors and warning signs that we will see today. You do need to be direct to them. If you are not direct in asking, are you thinking about contemplating suicide, you will not get a direct answer. They will put the topic off somewhere else, and I have a short video that will kind of explain that a little bit. And people that are impacted by suicide or contemplating suicide, they should not be invisible. And that's one of the things that we're also going to talk about is not ignoring the signs and stuff that you see in your workplace. So why is this important in your workplace? We're soon going to find out in this short little video. I think some of you guys will be very amazed at how often suicide is actually done and how much it actually costs you, the employer, when that happens.
How many of you have been trained in CPR? Good. And how many of you have ever used it in the workplace? That extremely small percentage would seem like quite a poor return on investment, wouldn't it? Yet, most companies still invest in CPR training because they recognize its value, not just for their employees, but for all of society. The same holds true for suicide prevention in the workplace. Just as wellness programs work to reduce heart disease, Companies are recognizing the value of investing in suicide prevention training. That's why I've come to talk to you today. Because suicidal thoughts are usually invisible, employers usually assume it doesn't happen here until it does. Workplaces have begun to shift their perspective on suicide from not our business to a mindset that makes suicide prevention a health and safety priority. And you are part of that solution. Let's take a look at suicide by industry. As you can see, it's highest in construction trades, followed by agriculture, warehousing, mining, and manufacturing. While men and women are both at risk for suicide, men in the age range from 30s to 60s tend to be in the greatest risk group across all industries.
I don't recognize anybody since the reorg. Everyone is younger than me, smarter, more driven. There's no place for me. It's like I don't exist. Hi, I'm Reggie. Yep, you don't exist, Reg.
While most workplaces focus on suicide prevention because it's the right thing to do, it also makes good business sense. Recently, a team of health economists studied the costs of suicide and the return on investment of suicide prevention and intervention activities to workplaces and communities. They found that on average, the cost of a suicide death of one male construction worker was $2.14 million, mostly due to the average 27.3 years of productive employment lost. They also determined that for every dollar invested in suicide prevention, $4.60 would be returned to society. We find that the workplaces that have the best prevention practices focus on overall employee well-being and not just emergency interventions or warning signs. Cultivating self-esteem, mastery, resilience, and emotional intelligence in your employees can pay dividends in greater employee engagement, proactive work behaviors, and transformational leadership. Altogether, a culture of employee well-being can create a protective environment against suicide and making you more competitive in other areas.
Oh, sorry I didn't see you, buddy. You're like a ghost. See, you don't exist. Perhaps it's time we make it official.
Suicide prevention can't happen without a caring community where people are looking out for each other. When we work together, we're in this together.
So if you guys can kind of do this little guided exercise for me. So I would like you guys to think about something that happened in your lifetime that the people that tried to help you were not very helpful. They might have even said some things not meaning to, but kind of hurt you or made the situation worse when that really wasn't what they were planning on doing. What were some of those things that they said? Can you type that in the chat? And Shelby, I can't read those chats.
Yeah, I'll read them out.
All right, thank you.
Some of them, it could always be worse.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, upon the death of my 20-year-old brother, it's for the best.
And how did those kind of things make you guys feel? It didn't really make that situation better. and it kind of hurt your feelings. So if there's something else in your life that happened and people were helpful to you, can you kind of put into the chat some of the things that they did or said that were helpful to you?
Here's a comment. Prove those persons weren't in touch with my reality at all.
Yes. Now, the reason we did this is because we want to create an environment that people feel comfortable in coming to us or you in discussing some problems and issues that they have. And we're going to take a look about how people with suicide ideations come to that realization on how to do that. This is a movie by Ms. Brene, and I think this will kind of reiterate what we just did, the empathy versus sympathy. Oh, sorry.
What is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, whoo, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
We have all had some people in our lives that are just like that giraffe, haven't we? So let's talk about the suicide risk model, and it's called the Joiner theory, and there are 3 areas of this model that when you complete all 3 of these is when you are at the highest risk for death and suicide. So we're going to go over the definition of what perceived burdensomeness is. That would be the perception of being a burden to others. When people are in this state, they feel that their death is worth more than their life because they've let people down. The word perceived is emphasized because frequently their thoughts are significantly distorted by the impact of depression or other mental conditions. The other half of that is called thwarted belongingness. That definition is called a social disconnection to something larger than oneself. People in this state feel that they've lost everything. They've lost relationships, they've lost partners, children, colleagues, friends, and in fact, they become quite isolated and they have lost their sense of purpose. Then you have to have the capability of performing the act of the suicide. So that's where the capability comes in. And by themselves, neither one of the perceived or thwarted belongingness is enough for a person to have the desire for death. But together, along with the capability, is when you have that strongest part. So capability is repeated exposure to painful and provocative experiences, familiarity, and access to lethal means. The disposition to have reckless behavior when capability is combined with someone who's experiencing a strong desire to die, that is a huge increase in their capability of committing suicide. So you have to have all three of those components. We do have a couple videos, but all of them are quite short.
It's helpful to know a theory about what puts someone at risk. The Joyner theory says that there are two influences that can create the desire for suicide. The first is called thwarted belongingness.
Okay, as part of the new reorg, they'll be splitting up our team, and some of us will be moving to the new location. The rest will stay here.
As human beings, we're incredibly social creatures, and we need to feel like we're a part of something larger than ourselves. Whether that's a neighborhood group, a family, a church, a workplace, there are many places where we feel a sense of belongingness. When that's taken away, it causes angst. The second piece is called perceived burdensomeness. And I emphasize the word perceived because when the person feels like they're a burden to the people that they care about, it might not be true in reality, but it is for them.
Hey, Reggie, look, I know selling this new product line is difficult, but you're dragging down all our numbers. I need you to step up, man, okay? People are tired of carrying you.
So you combine a sense of belongingness that's been taken away and a sense of burdensomeness, and it can generate a desire for suicide. Many people have that desire but never act upon it. So there's a third component, and that component is considered capability. Human beings have a very strong sense of self-preservation from the time we're infants. We strive to live. Anytime our well-being is being threatened, innately, instinctively, without thinking, we will fight for life. We will fight to live. So to overcome that, there has to be some kind of history that builds up this fearlessness to engage in a very violent act. With all three of those components combined, that is what puts someone at a high risk for suicide.
Step up. People are tired of carrying you.
There are other risk factors as well, such as going through a significant loss, a divorce, a breakup, the death of a loved one, or a health crisis. Extreme pressure to succeed can also increase the risk. If an individual is becoming suicidal, they're probably going to talk about it. They're going to be derogatory toward themselves.
I'm tragic, Sarah. I've got nothing to live for. I don't know why I even bother. I should just quit.
Don't quit. This reorg is hard on everyone, Reg. It will get better.
I don't just mean quit the company. I mean quit all of it. Life, everything.
They might talk about hopelessness or offer veiled threats.
You know what? I've been a top performer at this company for 15 years. Maybe you'd all be better off without me dragging you down.
Suicidal ideation includes someone talking about actual ways to kill themselves, like what kinds of pills might work, or where to get a gun, or what would be the best way to die. Look for changes in behavior patterns. If an employee was a certain way and now they're different, that's something to watch. They used to be motivated and committed, and now they're not. They've stopped caring about their appearance and social norms, not meeting performance goals, not getting along with coworkers, being argumentative or crying in the bathroom.
I saw him coming out of a bar at lunch today.
Don't worry about it. Reg is old school.
People very often have touching moments with loved ones and friends in their final days. It's a way to wrap up those relationships and say some parting words without the person necessarily knowing they're saying goodbye.
Hey, if anything ever happened to me, you'd take care of Spot, wouldn't you?
Of course I would. They tie up loose ends with their financial matters.
I need to update my 401k beneficiaries.
Taken by themselves, none of these is necessarily indicative of a risk for suicide. But taken together or in some combination, they can be serious signs and need to be addressed. Next, we'll talk about how to have a conversation with someone you suspect might be suicidal.
All right. So in the comments, I'm going to read this case example for you. And this is where we would break out into, if we were doing this in person, several groups, and each of you guys would get a different case study, and you would go through the warning signs, the risk factors, and those sort of things. But I'm going to read this case example to you, and we're going to go over it kind of together. And you can type in the chat some warning signs and the risk factors that Fernando is experiencing. So Fernando is an overachiever at the office, kind of just like what Reggie was, who recently has been falling short of his goals. Due to the increased amount of work the department has coupled with significant staff reductions, Fernando is no longer able to achieve the way he once did. Over the last couple of months, you've noticed that he's staying at work later and later. He's still unable to meet very important goals and has begun making some self-deprecating comments with regard to his development. You've also noticed that when he comes into work on Monday mornings that he smells faintly of cigarettes and alcohol, and explains that he's probably been partying a little bit too much here lately. Fernand is recently divorced. He says that he is failing his children because he was unable to secure the promotion at work due to budget and staff cuts. One day out of nowhere, he looks you in the eye and says, "What's the use?" The next day you see him arguing with a coworker over who is slated to get credit for a particular project they've been working on. Fernand wraps up the encounter by swearing at the coworker. The project of discussion is subject to debate, is due in 2 days, and he is behind on his part of the project. In the break room, he hints to you that there will be a surprise in the office in the morning if he doesn't get the work done. If that guy gets the credit, I don't know what I'm capable of. He says to you. Quietly, he adds, "You just might not see me tomorrow morning," and then walks away. What would you guys do in that situation when he walks away? Would you let him walk away? Would you call him back? Would you let him cool down and then call him back? Have a different conversation with him? How would you guys kind of handle that one? You can put those answers in the chat.
You ready for some answers?
I sure am.
Go ahead. All right, so we have go after him or call back. Another one is call him back and ask him, "What do you mean we might not see you?"
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Kind of all of those are kind of what you expect people to go do when someone is in your office and slams out and, it goes that way. Can you guys tell me some of Fernand's warning signs Remember, they would be behaviors and that are different out of the norm.
Normally a good worker, but not lately. Substance abuse, negative comments about himself, late on assignments.
How about he had a veiled threat in there? And he's also agitated with himself and his coworkers. So what are his risk factors? Did you guys find any of those?
A recent major life change.
Mm-hmm.
So divorce.
Yep. How about budget cuts, didn't get the promotion, he feels like he's letting his kids down. All of those are examples of some risk factors that he has. In doing the synopsis on Fernando, do you guys feel like you might have enough to ask him if he thinks he's committing suicide or thinking about it? What do you guys think?
Asking direct questions is always appropriate.
Yes, it is. And it is the way to go. And we'll learn that here a little bit later on. But yes, there's quite a lot there. And yes, it is quite appropriate at this point in time to ask him if that is what he's thinking about.
It's easy to say, this is none of my business. But if the warning signs are there, they shouldn't be ignored. In fact, it's an absolutely necessary conversation if we want to possibly prevent a coworker or loved one from acting on suicidal thoughts. But how do you ask someone who shows signs of suicidal tendencies if they are in fact suicidal? Before checking in on someone else's state of mind, we need to check in on our own. Ask yourself, am I speaking from a place of compassion and empathy for what the person is experiencing? Am I working to empower this person to seek their own path to recovery? Can I be detached from the outcome and not take this personally? If you can answer yes to these questions, you're likely in the proper emotional mindset to start a delicate conversation. Are you trying to fix this person? When we act as if someone needs fixing, the message they receive is you're broken and incapable, and they will likely shut down. For suicidal individuals, life's problems can take on what Dr. Martin Seligman calls the 3 Ps. Problems are seen as pervasive, permanent, and personal. Pervasive. It's not one area of life that's painful, but many areas. Permanent. Problems seen as permanent will never get better. Personal. They are personally to blame for all or most of their problems. There's little room for bad luck, circumstance, or a lack of experience. Listen for these clues.
Everything in life sucks. It will never get better, and it's all my fault.
This adds up to feelings of hopelessness and a skewed perception that
Everyone would be better off without me.
authentic connection is the antidote to thwarted belongingness. This is what a suicidal person longs for. So in asking our question, we need to make it our stated intention to help the person feel connected, understood, and that they belong. So how do we ask if someone is thinking of suicide? The good news is there's a script for that. In general, the question can be broken down into 4 parts. Part 1, recount the behavior or warning signs that concern you. Part 2, ask the question directly. Part 3, thank and affirm them. Part 4, offer resources and assistance.
Reggie, I've noticed that you've been sad and agitated at work,
missing meetings, and you've been saying things like, you won't have to worry about me much longer, and I'm concerned. Are you thinking of suicide?
How they respond to that question can tell you a lot. Let's start with the most common response. No.
No, but thank you for asking. No, I'm not there yet, but I can use some help. Oh, thank you for your concern, but I am getting help.
But getting a no isn't the end. It's often the beginning to a positive conversation, support planning, and access to employee resources. But how can you be sure that a no response is real? Well, you can't. However, there are some indicators that may help. Saying thank you or expressing gratitude for your concern, being open to help, resources, and solutions, continuing to talk about their problems and staying engaged in the conversation. These are all hopeful signs. Now, let's talk about a strong reactive no. This is the biggest fear most people have when asking the question, what if the person gets angry? Will I be embarrassed or get in trouble for asking?
I can't believe you asked me that. I'm just updating my life insurance to protect my family.
I'm here for you, and I want to be the person you can talk to about these things if you ever need to. I noticed my question has upset you, and I want to understand what you're experiencing. Please tell me more.
Remember, if you're coming from a caring, compassionate place without judgment, that matters. We should never feel overly responsible for other people's reactions. With that said, a strong reactive no could be a sign of the person deliberately lashing out to deflect from the truth. So watch their body language. No making eye contact, agitation and fidgeting, ending the conversation. An unclear no could be, I don't know, if they begin telling a story unrelated to what you asked.
It used to be different around here. I used to know people. I was a top performer and I was really good at selling our flagship product.
Allow them to talk and listen.
But ever since the reorganization, I don't know people. And I don't like that I don't have a real office anymore.
Then be willing to ask again.
I believe I asked you a direct question about your thoughts about suicide, but I'm not sure I heard a clear answer. So I'm going to ask you again. Are you thinking about suicide?
Yes.
What if they say yes to the suicide question? Here are some responses that can make a difference. Express gratitude. Your first words should be thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for trusting me.
Thank you for your courage to be vulnerable with me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for valuing our relationship. Reassure with partnership. The second words you should share are, I'm here for you.
I will stay with you as we figure this out together.
Hey, I'm on your team. You're not alone. Okay? I've got your back.
I'm going to be right here with you until we have a viable plan to get you the support you deserve. Hope is the antidote to suicide. The most effective way to offer hope is through action.
Let's use the Employee Assistance Program. I can make a call and get things started. Will you be willing to take it from there?
After the conversation, follow up and make sure the person is getting help and hasn't hit a roadblock. Working in partnership lets people know they have an advocate, someone who's in their corner. Another way to express this part is the idea of reciprocity. I'm helping you just as you would help me. This statement lets the person know they're not a burden, but that this is just what friends and family do for one another out of love. When someone discloses to you that they're having thoughts of suicide, treat it as a gift. They've invited you into a vulnerable part of their world. So when they say yes to the suicide question, take a deep breath and follow the steps. You might just be the one to help them save their own life.
Has, at this point, you would probably, if you didn't have an EAP to send them to, probably start giving them some resources locally and nationally. You can always send people to their EAP, send them to a counselor, their chaplain. You can call the suicide hotline. You can call your local NAMI. You can call the suicide hotline. You can send them to the ED. there's lots of resources that you could send a person to. And people that leave with the classes usually have a whole pamphlet and stuff of things that they can send them to. And then this one's going to kind of explain the aftermath of a suicide at your work. Did it again. That button is so close.
Let's put everything we've talked about into context. More than 10.5 million adults have seriously thought about suicide. More than 3 million of these people have made a plan for suicide. Of those, about 1.5 million adults have attempted suicide, and 48,000 died from suicide in the US in the last year. In this video, we'll talk about those who survived, as well as those employees who were left behind to pick up the pieces. Most organizations believe that suicide can't happen here until it does.
It's just, is there something I could have done or said?
What resources do we need to deploy to help our employees through this?
Well, how do we as an organization confront suicide?
Reggie is back today. What do I do? What do I even say? Glad you're alive. Don't do it again. There's no Hallmark card for this.
The odds are that someone in your workplace will be affected by suicide. And whether it's thoughts, an attempt, or death, it will impact your employees. When a suicide attempt occurs, it creates ripples throughout your organization. Many think it would be isolated to just one pocket or team or department. But the effects of suicide can be far-reaching. What we're really talking about here is life and death. And those kinds of big conversations are bound to trigger thoughts and feelings as employees struggle to understand what happened and to search for meaning. And one of the best ways, and in fact, the only way we can find meaning, is to talk about it.
What should I say to him?
Well, what kind of support would you give to someone who was hurt in an auto accident or was recovering from a major surgery?
I'd probably say, do whatever you need to do to get back on your feet, and we'll be here for you. Something like that?
How about, I've got your back, man. If you need any help with your projects, you can count on me. I mean, us, all of us, okay?
Any and all of that sounds good.
When someone who attempted suicide returns to work, specific steps should be followed to reintegrate them into the workplace. Get a doctor-approved medical plan for the person to work on a reduced schedule so they can come back slowly. Prepare a sensitive, compassionate, and realistic integration plan. Make a flexible schedule that allows for support group and therapy appointments. Increase their workload gradually to avoid unnecessary stress.
I'm not sure what to say or do. I just feel so bad for her. I mean, wow.
What would you say to her if her husband had died of an accident instead of suicide? A good rule of thumb is to remember however you would normally support people at work who have suffered tragedy is probably acceptable here.
What can you do in the aftermath of the actual suicide of an employee? Your goal in postvention is to stabilize the workplace community and help people cope with their trauma and their grief. There can be collective guilt that seems to fester in a work site. People will ask, could I have seen this? What should I have done? Should I have said something? You can't overplan resources to help when a crisis happens. Thinking it'll just be this small pocket of people and we'll just plan to help this pocket is not realistic. It's better to prepare for spread, and there are always unexpected reactions. Contact more resources than you need. It's easier to scale back than scale up. We hope you walk away from this presentation with a deeper understanding that the people in your workplace are your most valuable assets, and the people in your organization are your best line of defense against suicide. And just like CPR training, training your employees to look for signs, be compassionate, ask questions, and seek help makes them part of the solution. It can save a life. It's both good business and the right thing to do. There is help and hope and belonging.
And if this was where we do it in person at your facility, this is where we would break out into several smaller groups and give them each scenarios for learning how to be more comfortable and talking about supporting them when they come back, supporting the family, and those sort of things.